Alright, we are getting real, getting deep today. This video is the 5 most traumatic events in my life in chronological order. So, the first one, I was born. And sounds a little extreme, but actually I have not met a single person yet that does not have a birthing trauma, a wound around birth. Maybe it's the way we handle it nowadays. Maybe it's just part of coming into this world. But my mom's labor was induced, so I was born early, and so I was very upset about that. Now, I learned all about this from different therapy techniques that I've done on other kind of triggers that were coming up in my life that took me back to this event. So it was all in my subconscious and still playing out with me as an adult all the time. So it's something to look into if you feel drawn to that. But yeah, so the first issue I had was all this anger over being violated, like very violated with something so sacred, like the amount of time you need in the womb before you're born. This doctor violated that. My mother allowed him to because she trusted the medical system, and they went in with a C-section, which was also very violating of sacred space. Like, the womb is not meant to be cut open. Now, I completely understand that is not something every mother can go through as a natural birth, but I'm just sharing with you what I experienced as the baby in that scenario. Just a lot of violation and a lot of anger from me that I am probably still clearing out at the age of 42 now, just about in one more week. When the doctor grabbed me out, he used really cold metal forceps and he grabbed my shoulder. So when stressful events would happen to me in this life, I would start to feel that shoulder pain. And that's actually how I ended up going back into this whole memory, was following that pain in my shoulder. He had these really cold metal tongs, basically, that he grabbed me as a baby out with. And then, I saw him, washing out my mother's womb in a very aggressive, masculine way that's not meant to be done like that. And they didn't put me on my mother's chest. So that heart-to-heart connection right when you're born is very important, and we know that now. In the 80s, it was just especially with this particular kind of doctor, a robot, basically, a series of robotic things that he did to make a C-section happen. And so I missed that heart-to-heart connection that's so important for newborns. And they put me on a cold metal table, and I don't know how long it was till I got to see my mom. And she also couldn't breastfeed, so that's another core wound that I have. Had really nasty 80s formula. The formula today, unfortunately, is not much. It is a little better, but it's not much better. And I was always hungry, so probably because I wasn't getting what I needed from the formula they were giving me. So not to make any mothers feel bad out there about using formula, it was what my mom needed to do, and it was available at that time. But I'm just sharing how I relive that when I go back into those memories. And so how that played out basically is that I am severely undercuddled. So any of my big love language for me is cuddling, and it's a very important part of my relationships romantically, and it's not for a lot of people. So it's an interesting thing to discover about ourselves. So yeah, birth trauma, if you haven't looked into it, I'm definitely happy to answer any questions about ways to go in and explore that if you feel drawn to it. So, second most traumatic event, when I was 3 years old, I had just learned to whistle. My dad had been whistling around me, and it was driving me nuts that I couldn't do it because I would always go like, and no sound would come out. And so this very day, I had sound. Like, I tried to whistle, and it was like, I was ecstatic. I was so happy about this. I was whistling everywhere I went. And my brother was playing baseball in our yard with the neighbors. And I was like, oh my God, I can whistle. I am going to be the referee. You're going to play baseball. I'm going to referee. And I stood on the edge of the patio. We had a covered patio, and they were like quite far away, like 50 yards, 100 yards away. And I was entertaining myself as a referee whistling. And I didn't know until that time. I think my brother knew because he'd played baseball with these people before, but the neighbor he was playing baseball with was one of the kids that instead of hitting the bat, he just throws the bat. So I don't know what happened if they didn't have an actual bat. I kind of remember something like that they were using a broom instead of a bat. So I don't know if it broke the broomstick or he threw the bat, and you can see it here. I still have a dent in my skull. Hit me right in the head. Well, I was really, little one. I was barely 3 years old. So this was a really big head wound. I remember it being such a big deal that my parents were calling 911 because they'd already taught me about that at school and how important it was to know to do it, but only do it if it's a real emergency. And she put the dish towel on my head to cover up the blood that was just pouring out like a bucket. And that also shocked me because I was not allowed to touch the dish towels. So surgery, all of that, I have a lot of memories from that most people don't have from that age, but yeah, little head injury, crushed skull at the age of 3. And they say things happen in threes. So that brings me to my third traumatic event. Well, okay, what's the outcome of number 2 is I had some very deep-seated anger and hatred towards that boy who did that to me, who was, in my mind, so stupid that he would throw a bat instead of holding it in his hand. I thought that was really, really dumb. And I kind of, as a 3-year-old processing life, you don't really have the perspective of an adult that, he's a child also. I mean, I think he was 9 years old, so he was much more aware than me. But, so just sharing from my inner 3-year-old perspective, I was pissed. I had some very deep-seated hatred and anger towards men in general because of that, because I considered him so stupid for having thrown the bat and crushing my skull. And those things are internalized. You don't have any time to analyze them. That's why therapy is so effective, because you can go back into those moments with your adult, fresh perspective and reevaluate how you want to respond to that. Because when that happens, it's so fast and it gets buried in you and you carry it with you. Therapy is so powerful and so transformative. So many different types and modalities to find the ones that work with you. But yeah, so as I said, things happen in threes, they always say. So my next traumatic event was a concussion. I was, I think, 8 years old at this time. It was maybe a month after Hurricane Andrew hit. So we were actually living in a trailer outside of our house in the yard, because the whole house had been gutted to repair the water damage from the hurricane. And my dad was working on something. It was summertime, I think. No, I think school had already started. So I was playing at the neighbors across the street, and I had rollerblades, which I loved my rollerblades, and we had the great idea to play basketball in our rollerblades. They had a basketball court at her house. It was a cement pad and the hoop. And the pad is nice to use with your rollerblades because we lived on a dirt road. We couldn't go up and down the street in front of our house. So we only had either the driveway or a little paved area. And we went over there, and the first time we threw the ball, it landed in the middle of this rain puddle that had algae growing in the middle of it. So it wasn't just water on concrete, it had very slippery algae, which I looked at and I evaluated with my 8-year-old logic that it was very dangerous to go pick up that ball. Actually, the other kids, we all talked about it, that we can't pick it up, but didn't want to take our rollerblades off because it takes a long time to put them on and take them off for us. And I was like, you know what, I'm really careful. I'm going to be so careful, and I'm going to pick up the ball. And despite how careful I was, as soon as I kind of put my foot down in that puddle, my feet just flew out from under me, and I smacked the concrete head first. So, boom. And we did the thing that you do in movies where they're like, okay, how many fingers am I holding up? And when I remember all this and I look back, I know when my friend held her fingers up, I was seeing like multiples. I was seeing like probably 16 fingers, not 4 fingers. But I knew which ones were real. So I thought it was like, oh, can I get it right? And so I told her which ones were real. And we were really scared about telling our parents because we thought we'd get yelled at. I think they might have told us that we could rollerblade, but we weren't allowed to rollerblade at the basketball hoop. So we were like, okay. So she's like, okay, you know how many numbers there are? Then you're safe. You can walk home. And she was 2 houses down the street from me. And I remember waking up several times on that walk home because I had walked into the bushes. So I guess I was trying to walk straight down the road. And I was so messed up from this head injury, I was not able to walk straight, and I kept ending up in the bushes, and I was literally passing out while I was trying to walk. So thankfully we live on a very rural road at that time. There wasn't like cars that could hit me, but looking back as an adult, I'm very shocked that I had such an intense head injury and did not tell anybody. So I snuck home, made it into the little travel trailer, and passed out on the sofa in there. I remember waking up at least once to puke, and then my mom got home from work probably like 3 or 4 hours later, not understanding why I'm like passed out on the sofa and so messed up. And so she took me to the hospital, and it was a concussion. That ended up making me very scared, and I didn't realize that till during therapy sessions that took me back to this moment. But the way that played out in my adult life, I was like very often doing things that have some level of risk and being very scared that I couldn't trust my perception of the risk. So like that event kind of like made me lose trust in some ways of myself. So I was really glad when I was able to go back in and clear that out and reconnect to my inner wisdom and all of that. But yeah, so the third, I said things happen in threes. I'm going to lump this one in right in, was 2 years later, my mom was in a car accident, and then I hit my head on the dash. I was in the back seat, so the middle console, that was concussion before I had this, when they said the brain shakes in the cavity, and that was really intense. Like, they explained all those symptoms. The contusion they said I had was a bruise on your brain, which to me sounds more physically harmful, but it was just to me a lot more mild, the recovery and everything. So I've had 3 traumatic brain injuries by the age of 10. I think kind of something was trying to take me out. So the 4th most traumatic event for me, around that same time, I was attacked by my dog. He actually bit my mom also in that same day, so we went to the hospital to get her stitches, and then when we came home, my dad chained the dog up away from where we were camping in the woods, and this was a hunting dog, so he was known to be okay, but he was aggressive if you stepped on him. Like, he would bite you if you stepped on him, and that's what happened to my mom. He was sleeping near where she was cleaning in the little kitchen area she had for a camper, and she kind of stepped on him by accident or bumped into him, and he must have been like having a nightmare because he like launched at her, and then she said you could see the look on his face where he like kind of woke up and realized what he was doing, and he felt really bad about it. So then we took my mother to the hospital. She had 5 stitches from 2 wounds, and my dad chained the dog up away from everybody because it was cold and he was older, so probably his bones were hurting, and he wanted the dog to stay away from like all the other people because we weren't the only people there. There were other families staying in this campsite with us that we shared this camp with. And so it was dark and I couldn't see, and the dog was black on top. He was tan underneath, and in the dark I was walking to the campfire because, like I said, it was cold. And so I thought I would go away. Nobody else was walking. Everyone was walking this one way. And I thought, oh, I can go this way because it was like a shortcut from where I was to the fire. Well, that's where the dog was chained up and sleeping. So I put my foot right into the middle of him. He jumped up. He bit me on my shoulder here. And I also was at this time wearing this little floaty key keeper that they gave in a fishing tournament my dad was in to us. And just being a silly little kid, I just was wearing it. It's not like I had anything to keep safe. We weren't even on the water. And it was hanging right here on my chest neck area, and it was covered in bite marks when I found it afterward. So I'm glad I had that. Otherwise, he might have gotten me here. And it would have been a lot worse. But so that was painful. I also got like 5 stitches and could see inside my shoulder. But we went back to the same doctor we were just at a few hours earlier for my mom, and they wanted to, usually when even a dog bites one person, they want you to send him to the shelter to be put down. And we decided not to because my mom felt like he didn't mean to bite her. The same thing with me. I actually stepped on him. He didn't like come at me. So my dad did not put him down the second time either. I don't know if they still let you do that. I think maybe if your dog bites 2 people, it's possible that you're not allowed to have a choice in it anymore. But what's interesting is I had a huge phobia of dogs after this, whether it was rational or not. You can't speak rationally to a phobia. Like, by that I mean even if the dog was like really tiny, like shorter than my knee, I would have this really deep fear. And the only dog I was not scared of was him, because I knew he wouldn't bite me unless I stepped on him. But that was a long time to get over, and he was only around for like another couple years after that. But the dog we got that replaced him was very aggressive to me. Not if you stepped on him. He was just straight up aggressive. But he would only do it when other people weren't around. So nobody believed me. I had this huge phobia of dogs. And so I couldn't walk in my yard for like 10 years of my life. Which was fun. Basically till I moved out and went to college. Then I was able to kind of move past that. But yeah, and then to my next most traumatic event. This one is cliche, but it was my first breakup, so I won't go too deep into that here, but we got together when I was 14, he was 15, and we were together 7.5 years. So I was around 21 when we broke up, and it shattered my world. It was from the day we started dating at the age of 14, his parents, when I met them, just constantly like love bombed me and told me that we were getting married. Like I was marrying her son, his mom. And I just thought that's my life, that we were going to be together and we were going to get married. So like, I think had that not happened, there would have been a lot of moments in those 7 years where maybe we would have realized, hey, let's date other people, you know, we're young, let's not stay together. But since they had put this like on us that we were getting married, I think we both believed it, because that's what they did. They met when she was 14 and her dad was 15, and they'd been together all this time. So they just thought we were doing the same thing, which I see as natural, but I kind of wish they hadn't done that, because maybe we wouldn't have had a 7-year relationship. Maybe we would have had like a great 2-year relationship and something, and then we would have been young and free and met other people, because it was actually his college graduation was the day we broke up. So his entire college, most of my college, and all of high school, we were not free. We were tied down. So I feel like I didn't explore a lot there. But anyways, it was soul crushing. I did not know how to take it. I didn't know how to handle it. I never felt pain like that before. We're not meant to be alone. You've maybe heard this before, but we are more communal than a deer or a cow or a sheep. You know, you see herding animals, and if you see one alone, you feel like, oh no, that poor, you know, sheep or horse or goat, they need other ones around them. We need people more than they need community. And so that's why, one of the reasons why when we go through a breakup, it's so impactful on our body. You know, you can't eat, you're heartbroken, you're super stressed. All I could do to feel better was take a bath, and I thought that would, you know, usually if that happened to me before, but maybe it's a day or two and I'm back to myself. This was like 6 weeks. And then of course, looking back, that's like a number one sign of depression, you know, like real clinical depression. Like I was non-functional. I didn't go to class. I dropped that whole semester in school, all of this, and had no idea how to deal with it. So I am glad with all the tools in my toolbox now. I'd like to go back to myself at that time and show myself all healthy ways to deal with it. I mean, I was 21 and in college, so at a big drinking school, and I thought, all right, like I'll just drink alcohol until this very uncomfortable feeling goes away. You can guess how healthy that is of a choice in life. But yeah, so, and the final trauma I'll list here was when my mother passed. She had cervical cancer that she was fighting, and for some reason, I'm sure it was partially her choice, she didn't tell us that it was like going downhill. So I kind of thought that she was just gonna get better, and So when I lost her, well, they say, when you lose your first love, the first cut is the deepest. Well, if you haven't lost a loved one yet, I'll tell you the first one is really like a brick in the face, knock you over, bowl you over. Luckily, I dealt with that one in a little more of a healthy way, by becoming a workaholic instead of an alcoholic. But that'll be another video to go into all of that. But losing my mother, I was 25 years old when that happened. Am I adding this up right? No, I was 25 around when she first was diagnosed. I was 26 when she passed. And then a couple years later, I lost my grandparents and successively, and then my brother disappeared on a fly fishing trip. That's like a huge shock to the system. Your sibling, he was the older one, so I didn't have a day in this life without him, even though we lived pretty far usually from each other. At this time, I was living in the same town as him, and we were working on projects together every day. And it's just a huge, life is a roller coaster, man. Definitely after losing 3 loved ones, the 4th one was a lot easier to handle, even though he was so suddenly and shockingly disappeared. He just vanished while he was fly fishing. We only found his dog in his backpack, but at this point I had a lot of tools in my toolbox to process that. So I processed it in much healthier ways, even though it's probably still took 3 or 4 years of processing. And yes, so there we go. I thought it was 5, but I probably hit like 6 or 7 most traumatic life events, and hopefully there's something interesting for you there.